So today I want to talk about stress in dogs because it's a big topic and very important topic too. Things that we should all be aware of when it comes to stress and behavior in our dogs. So it's getting very quickly, it's getting darker outside. So if it looks blurry, it's because it's dark already. So we are talking a lot about stress. If your dog is stressed, and if your dog have any behavior problems, it could be due to stress. And I know for a lot of people, including myself, it's a bit overwhelming to hear the word stress all the time. It's because your dog is stressed because this and that, and it has a whole negative feel to it, doesn't it? I too had that feeling when I was attending Turid Rugaas dog trainer school 14 years ago, and there was a lot of talk about stress, and I thought, really? Is my dog always stressed? Is that the only cause, to their behavior or their behavior problems? Is it stress? And the thing is that the answer is very often yes. However, I also want to remind you that when we talk about stress and dogs and behavior, we include all types of stress. So it's not negative, it's not necessarily all negative stress, that your dog is stressed because it's fearful or have anxiety. It could also be because your dog is doing a lot of things, doing a lot of different activities, doing things that your dog don't necessarily, I wouldn't say like, but enjoy that much. Or very commonly, dogs don't are not always the ones to decide what's best and not for them. So if they were living in an environment where they only have their dog family around, they will be much better at customizing their activity to them. So for example, they would stop play if it was too much or too stressful, and they would stop certain behaviors that are not good for them, because that's what dogs do. They are very good at reading and understanding each other, and we are not that good to understand their language and their signs. So we confuse a lot of, very often, we confuse their behavior and their signs, their calming signals, and that's where we end up with dogs that have a high stress level over a long period of time, chronically stressed. This goes for all dogs, in all countries, in all cultures, about the stress. That's the thing with dogs. They're very much the same, and their language is the same, whether they're in Morocco, France, Latvia, or Luxembourg or Norway. Their calming signals are the same. So the thing with stress is that we know now that the symptoms of stress and the overall, what is the word? The symptoms and the results of stress is very much like in humans. So it's very easy for us to relate to how they might feel when they're stressed. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of the signs that our dogs are showing when they're stressed. You probably know some of them, but some of them, maybe you'll be surprised. So typical signs of a dog being stressed in a certain situation is panting, drooling, trembling, whining, barking or howling, or they get more restless and they start pacing. Calming signals that they can use more of is yawning and excessive licking. Now I'm saying more. If your dog is yawning once in a while, that's okay. But in the situation, in a stressful situation, your dog will show not only one, but more calming signals, several calming signals. Other behaviors, which is common if your dog is stressed, is that they try to avoid something or someone, even maybe trying to hide. They also might get dilated pupils, maybe even changing the color of their eyes if they have a long-term stress issue. Also, if they are stressed for over a long period of time, they can start losing their appetite. They get digestive issues. Some dogs get diarrhea immediately if they're in a stressful situation. So you can tell very much by the shape of what comes out from the dog. Um, they can lose fur. This also can happen immediately. So typical situation is if your dog is going to the vet. Very often you will notice that they're shedding fur immediately when they come into the vet office. And when they're put on the vet table, it could be just shedding like crazy. Some dogs could do that. And that stops quite soon after you leave the veterinarian's office. So there is a difference, of course, between being stressed in a situation you don't feel comfortable in, you're a bit fearful of, or for any kind of reason, your stress level goes up. Or it could be a long-term stress. Long-term stress is unfortunately quite common cause of behavioral issues. Examples of behavior problems could be anything that is more than normal. So more barking, more peeing. Peeing, by the way, if we are stressed, we need to, or we think we need to pee more often. So we go to the toilet more often. So that's, in any case, that's a very typical sign. Your dog can be developing separation anxiety because of long-term stress. And the health issues, what happens inside the body, is much the same as with humans. So lack of sleep or poor sleep quality, and of course digestive problems, we already talked about that, or lack of appetite, all of these things that are not good with our body. So a dog that spent a long time in a shelter, of course, that's a very stressful situation for any dog. They can lose their appetite, they lose their mood, and so on. However, I want to talk to you also about signs that are not that obvious. For example, dogs that are jumping a lot, barking a lot, that seems kind of happy, when people are greeting the dog, or when you are greeting your dog, it has this kind of happy behavior, overexcited. That could also be a sign of a long-term stress issue. So they kind of fool us there. So there are many things you have to notice. You have to observe and even write down, I would say, about their change of behavior or their specific behavior. So one thing is for sure, you cannot control if your dog is going to be stressed or not. The dog can't really control it. It can control avoiding stressful situations, but once stressed, it's the inside of the body that controls everything. So typically the adrenaline goes up. This happens if you're happy or if you get nervous or scared. And adrenaline goes up very quickly in our body, and then it takes a couple of minutes and then goes down again, which is okay. We can cope with that. Animals can cope with that. The problem is that when it's too often and it happens frequently, then our body is getting tired. It's like, burning high energy uh, too much. So then our body gets tired and worn out from that. Um, so, for example, if you have a dog that is fearful of cars, and if you take your dog out for a walk 3 times a day, and your dog is experiencing its fearfulness and anxiety towards cars 3 times a day, then your dog won't have enough time in between to calm down. The body doesn't have time to relax. Same thing that happens to us humans. If you have too much going on in your life, it could also be things you like to do. So let's say you have a lot of hobbies, a lot of activities, and you want to do everything. And in the weekends, you want to be with your friends or your family. And, there's always a lot of things going on in your life. You have to make sure yourself that you get the time for your body to relax in between. And this is especially important for young dogs and puppies. Because once we start having the problem with too high stress level over a long period of time, then we have some real health issues going on, which is not good at all. And also behavior problems. We experience them as behavior problems, of course, because it is a problem if your dog is too hyper or peeing inside or barking, a lot, doing all these kind of things is typical what we call behavior problems. So when we do a consultation, when a dog has certain kind of behavior problems, we always meet with the dog and the owner in an enriched environment for the dog first, so we can actually see, assess, and observe their behavior, their natural behavior at that point in time. And then we ask a lot of questions to the dog owners, such as the diet, the general health of the dog, what kind of behavior issues they have, what they do, what exactly they do, what time of the day they're doing it, all of these kind of things, so that we can find the underlying cause of the problem, which is very often stress. So the cause of long-term stress could be things like environmental changes, moving to a new home, loud noises, crowded spaces, even a divorce. If you are moving out from your husband or someone is moving out, even a child moving out, and the dog is missing the child, that could be causes of stress in the dog. If you have a cat or another dog and your dog is clearly missing that other animal, that could also lead to a high level of stress. Unfamiliar situations, now meeting new people, animals, and unfamiliar places, depending if your dog is fearful and anxious, if your dog have to experience these things too often without feeling safe, secure in them, they will of course raise the stress inside in their body. And even changes of routines, disruptions in feeding or walking or sleeping schedules. And very often due to health issues, such as any illness we don't know the dog have, or is untreated, or an injury that your dog might have. That is stressing the body. If we are in pain, our body is stressed. Yeah? So it's not something that you can decide. You cannot decide that your dog should not be stressed in certain situations. That's up to the dog. So in order to do something about it, we have to find the underlying causes. Are we doing the walks the right way for the dog, or are the walks too long, or too short. I mean, too much or too little of anything is not good. So we need to find that ideal balance, not only for a dog, but for the individual dog. That's very important. We often think of dogs as, one species and so on. So we we uh, we think that dogs need that and dogs do not need that. Well, it depends. It depends on the individual dog. And that's why we won't say to you that a dog should walk, X minutes a day, and so on, because it depends. So, what's important to know as a dog caretaker is that stress is unfortunately a very common cause of behavioral change and behavioral problems in your dog. And I don't feel comfortable saying behavior problems. I use the term because we feel like it's a problem. It is causing a problem to us, but first and foremost, it's a problem for the dog. The dog is not feeling well when it's stressed, right? When it has a high stress level. So it's our responsibility to find out what can cause the stress. And you do not have to call a dog trainer. You can start observing your dog's life yourself, and with the knowledge and skills that you get or have, then you can find a lot, then you can find the causes very much yourself if you want to. You might need some help if you're not a dog geek like we are at Nordic Dog Trainer. But start with observing what your dog is actually doing a day in his life, a typical day in his life, and see if there's anything that is that you can actually see that the dog is not comfortable with. Again, I know I'm coming back to the calming signals because it's so important to know them so that you can use your skills and observe to understand how your dog is feeling based on what they're showing us. They're showing us this all the time. They use their body language very active in their surroundings. So it's very important that you know that stress is a common cause of behavioral changes and behavioral problems. And then we have to do something about it. Instead of putting the lid on, so instead of training your dog a behavior or to train your dog obedience, if your dog is panting, being very restless, showing all signals of being stressed, I would not ask my dog to be doing anything by command, you know? You need then to provide for your dog an environment that your dog feels less stressed in. And that could be, is it the sleeping areas? Is it the food? Is it the type or the amount or the lack of mental and physical exercise, you know? Again, we have to find the balance in every dog's life, just like you. So this is why I actually love talking about this subject, because it's so easy for us humans to relate, because it's very much the same that happens inside our bodies. So you can relate to that. I'm sure that most people who are here now and who are listening to this recording later, you have experienced situations where you get stressed, or even life, you know, things happening in your life. Very typically, it's work issues. And this in 2024 now, we know about the fact that a lot of people are doing too much all the time. So it's actually kind of a pandemic that people get sick because they're doing too much. I don't know what it's called in English, but in Norway we have an expression. We're just saying that you hit the wall. You hit the wall. You have no more energy. You can't do anything anymore. You're just finished. So you've been stressed for a long time inside of your body. Maybe it's the work. Maybe you don't enjoy, your work environment. It could be anything. It could be your some family issues, or it could be anything in your life that makes us stressed, and it wears and tears on our body. Burnout, that's the word I was looking for. Burnout. And this happens to our dogs as well, because we believe that we should treat them just like ourselves. So when we are running around doing all kind of activities, we think that our dogs need to do them too, but they don't. I would actually also say that I don't think humans do. Why do we now pay for courses to learn mindfulness and all kinds of slow activities, especially being mindful? It's been for years already that we offer courses and education in being mindful. This is something we shouldn't have needed, because we have it inside us if you just took the time to listen to your own body. And now I sound a little bit like, um, but I sound like I know what I'm talking about, because I do. I do know what I'm talking about. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of you do as well. So what do we do if a dog is suffering from a long-term stress? If that is the problem, we need to find out what's causing the stress, just like you would with yourself and your life. What is causing the stress? Do I need a break? Do I need to move? Do I need to change my job? You know? So what can we do for our dogs? What do we need to change to optimize, to make their life better? Um, Before we even start training everything, this is now the exciting part comes, is that by customizing the living environment and surrounding and what your dog is doing of activities to the dog, then these behaviors that we don't like excessive barking or peeing or being restless, whatever it is, they will naturally stop existing, because your dog is now more calm. So you don't have to train them. You don't need an obedience to teach a dog to stop barking, because it barks less because it's less stressed. Now, another thing to remember as well is that it takes time. If your dog has a long-term high stress level inside of his body, it's been producing, bad stress hormones for ages, it takes a long time to calm down, up to 9 months. 9 months. So we can do in the beginning when we start changing, and it's not, I've talked about this many times before as well, it's not a matter of stopping to do things with your dog. Please do not, get me wrong. Do not stop doing things with your dog. Change what you're doing to your dog to what is better for your dog. So instead of doing an activity that you're pretty sure your dog doesn't enjoy that much, maybe you enjoy the activity more than the dog, and doing some other activity that you know that your dog enjoys. And how can you know? Well, it's about knowing the calming signals and their natural behavior, what they're telling us. So to know all these things, it gets so much easier to help yourself and to help your dog without having to spend money on dog trainers, and definitely not obedience classes, because that's not what we need in these situations. Okay? Does that make sense? if you get the knowledge of the dog's basic needs, natural needs, yeah, if you make sure you have that knowledge, the right knowledge, not the old fashioned knowledge that we thought we knew 20 years ago, but up to date on how dogs behave and what they need, then you can do this yourself. And that's what we teach people in level 1, by the way. We are teaching you to be your own best dog trainer or behaviorist, specialist, whatever you want to call it. Because it's all based very much on common sense. And that's why I like it, because I I like common sense. I don't like complicated. I like easy. And I think you do too. And it's much easier, I promise you, if you know these things yourself. And this is what my experience is as well when I speak to dog owners. They're not sure. They're not sure what to do, how to do it, and so on. However, most people have a gut feeling about something. And you should listen to that gut feeling, because very often it is absolutely right. And remember that you know your dog best. You know your dog better than any dog trainer. You are spending, most of your time with your dog, so you know your dog best. I can give some examples from my own life. I've told you this before as well, but very good example, which is kind of amazing, and I wish I had, I was able to film these situations. But as many of you know, I've used to have several dogs. I had 8 dogs at a point in my life. But since then, it was normally 5, 6 dogs in my household. Now I only have Wilma, who's sleeping in the back here. So when I had more than one dog, what I could see it almost daily was, if I was late for something, which I'm sorry to say, I'm very often late for something. When I was late and I was in a hurry and I was bringing my dogs with me, which I basically always do, to get them into the car could take a couple of minutes, and it caused more stress in myself and my dogs. I used to have a car that was very easy for the dogs to jump into. The one I have now is not that easy. I have to carry her up, lift her up, and help her out. My problem. I was digressing, sorry. So the dogs were able to very easily walk into the car almost. They didn't have to jump or anything. So when I was in a hurry, so when I didn't have enough time, the dogs were always stressed when we were leaving. And the 5 dogs, 6 dogs, they were like trying to get into the car at the same time. There was some barking going on, no aggression or anything, just overall like hyper stressed, And then when that happens, I get more stressed, and I look at my watch and I was like, oh, I'm really late now, so please hurry, get into the car. And those times that I had more than enough time, that I was not late, but I was early, just 5 minutes early, my behavior was very different apparently, because what happened was amazing. And it wasn't only once, it was all the time, that when I was not in a hurry, my dogs lined up. They lined up when I opened the car, and they went into the car one by one, just like school children, well-behaved school children, I didn't have to tell them anything. Everyone was quiet, calm, and they went into the car one by one. And it was amazing every time. And I keep, hitting myself, because I don't understand how I could ever be late again when I saw that this was the result. So my behavior and your behavior around our dogs is not to be underestimated. it is of very, very high importance. That wasn't good English, but I hope you understand what I mean. It's very relevant. Same thing was, this is many years ago, but I was living in this house where I'm at now. It's a very small house, and I had 8 dogs. And I just started out working as a teacher at the university. And there was a lot of things I had to do at work that I wasn't comfortable with. For example, the first time I was talking in an auditorium with more than 200 students, these kind of things. I was nervous. I was nervous before I went to work. And those mornings when I was nervous, my dogs were very restless. And I could not hide it because they smell the stress hormones. So when I was, in the bathroom putting on makeup and brushing my hair and stuff like that before I went to work, my dogs were in general more restless. They walked around, than when I was not stressed. And it was because of my own behavior. And it's not like I was running around like a mad person. I was trying to calm down, but there are signs that a person is stressed. And these signs, the dogs, they are very good at observing us. So they see our tiny, small, wee behaviors and movements. We are not very good at seeing those movements. And they smell the stress hormones. So that's only what they can see and smell. Now, very often our voice gets different when we are stressed. We don't mean to be, rude or impolite or anything. It's just how we react. So our voice is different as well. So you need to calm down to help your dog to calm down too. That's a very important factor. And if a dog lives in a household with a lot of things going on all the time, if you have teenagers or small, younger kids, and there's a lot of things going on, and if your dog doesn't have, adequate places to sleep, a variety of places, a choice to sleep, find a place to rest and sleep where they feel comfortable enough to do it, then these are things that can add to the problem. So I'm not saying that if you have a stressed dog, it's your fault. On the contrary, I'm saying that we have to have a look at how we do things, how we provide the home environment. Think about it. If you don't have carpets and you have a slippery floor, that is a stressful thing to our dogs. When every time they move in the house, they're a little bit afraid of the slippery floors. That would, of course, be something that would add to the stress level. So it's all of these kind of small things that we need to be aware of. Um, it's not uncommon that dogs are barking when they enter when you enter the house or when you get guests. That's perfectly normal. But if they can't stop and if they can't calm themselves down after a little while, then it's a problem. So this is not really related to what I'm talking about tonight. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to answer or start giving any advices on the barking. But you have to manage the situation, and there are definitely many times, but not many times, but many things you can do. For example, you can use the hand signal. Um, yeah, depending. I'm not going to go into. I was tempted to start talking about it, but it takes too long. Um, that's what we need to work on if that's the case. Um, and yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is we're all people. We make mistakes, but the more knowledge you have about how your dog is behaving, what is normal behavior and what is not normal behavior, and what is causing stress and the symptoms of stress, then you are much better equipped to help your dog. That's basically what I wanted to say. The thing is that there's always more than one sign. Always more than one sign. So we have to look at everything. We have to look at how we do the walks, how, we manage the daily life for the dog. And we have to look at the diet as well. The diet plays a very important role in this. But there's always more than one thing. Now, we also have to think that it's normal to have a high level of stress. It's very normal to be scared, for example, to, be scared. Um, so if you hear a loud noise or something, our body goes into stress modus with the adrenaline, and you calm down later. If you drive a car, I'm sure, unfortunately, and not knock wood now, we've been in situations when we're driving and then something almost happens, or it's a scary thing that's happening, then you can really feel your heart pounding afterwards. You can feel the blood in your veins. That's the adrenaline there and then. And that's not hurting us. That's okay. We are made for this. We are it's good. I mean, thank God we can feel fear and protect ourselves. It's a way of protecting ourselves so we can escape if something is dangerous. So if your house is burning, you would actually leave the house. You would react and leave the house. So it's very important that we all have the ability to do this behavior. The problem is that when it gets too frequent, so if it happens all the time because of things that we are doing and we're not aware of them, we're not aware that this has such an impact on ourselves or the dogs, that's when it starts going wrong. So about your dog, Rosemary, again, I would have to have a look at everything. Is it only for those lessons? And try and find out. You know your dog best. So if you feel like your dog is very stressed, and is it stressed because it's excited? Does he love to do it, or is it just, you know, because it's too much for him to cope? Very often that's the fact, to be honest, that it's just too much for them to cope. The thing is that it's amazing how small the changes can be for a dog to be less stressed. Very often, and Turid talks a lot about this, this is why our dog walks are very, very important, how we do them, because walking our dogs is something that we do, probably the activity we do the most with our dogs is to walk them, right? So if we're doing these walks in a way that's stressing our dogs, of course we have a problem. So first of all, Tudit always says that, the first thing we need to look at is how we're walking our dogs. So that's the first thing you would see. But if you have a suspicion that your dog is overall stressed, then if you don't know what to do, contact a dog trainer that can help you out. Now, not just any kind of dog trainer, but someone who knows about the dog's natural behavior and can help you with these issues. Because very often dog trainers are there to teach you to tell a stressed dog to sit. That will be the solution. So my dog is barking all the time. Well, every time he's barking, you ask him to sit or go and lay down or put him in a crate, even worse. So you actually put the lid on the problem. You're not doing anything about the problem. You're just putting a lid on everything. And it's very easy to teach dogs something, especially if we scare them a bit or yeah. So that's the easy way out, really, and not nice, of course, for the dog, because they don't get any help with their real issue. Okay, I've been talking for 50 minutes. It's supposed to be 30 minutes, but I have a lot to say when it comes to stress in dogs, because unfortunately, it's a very common problem today that our dogs are stressed because we are stressed and we push our lifestyle onto our dogs. So when you learn to observe your dog better and you know how your dog is conveying its feelings to you, showing the calming signals in different situations, then you get to know your dog better. You can see what he likes and does not like to do, and not mistake, being a happy dog with, not mistake, doing the mistake of thinking that a dog that is constantly jumping and barking is happy. It could be stressed, long-term stress, not stressed in the moment. So when the doorbell rings, very often dogs are very excited, and then of course the stress goes up, but it goes down again. But if the doorbell rings constantly, and this happens all the time, that's when you have a problem. So again, it can also be of exciting things happening. I'm just saying. So if they called you from the lottery and said, well, you won €1 million, wouldn't you be stressed in a positive way? I think you would. At least I would. My heart would go like, ooh. First of all, I would say it's a joke. But then when I realized it's true, the adrenaline would just float freely in my body. But if they called me every hour with the same message, my body starts to be a bit tired of this adrenaline going up all the time because of the positive excitement. Because it's positive. It's good if you win €1 million, right? So don't always think of it as negative, that your dog has to be scared of something to be stressed. It can be just the environment, that it's too much for your dog. Thank you everyone for being here, and observe your dogs. Find out what they like and what they don't like that much, and then you can start adjusting to your dog's daily schedule. Have a nice evening, everyone. Bye.